The stranger stumbled into Nathan Wheeler's garden just as the sun began its descent behind the Arizona mountains, her dress torn and stained with trail dust, her face streaked with tears that caught the dying light like fragments of broken glass. Nathan had been tending his tomato plants when he heard the gate creak open, followed by the sound of someone collapsing onto the wooden bench he had built beside his well. He straightened up, wiping dirt from his hands onto his worn trousers, and made his way toward the sound. What he found made him freeze mid-step. A woman sat hunched over, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Her dark hair had come loose from what must have been a careful arrangement that morning, now falling in tangled waves around her face. Her dress, though quality made, was covered in dust and showed signs of hard travel. She had not noticed him yet, lost in her grief. Nathan cleared his throat gently, not wanting to startle her. "Madam, are you hurt?" Her head snapped up, eyes wide with alarm. They were green, he noticed, even red-rimmed and swollen from crying. She looked to be in her early 20s, perhaps 23 or 24, not much younger than his own 28 years. Fear flashed across her face before exhaustion seemed to overtake it. "I apologize," she said, her voice hoarse. "I should not have intruded on your property. I was walking and I just could not continue. I needed to sit down." Nathan held up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "No apology needed. You look like you have been through something terrible. Can I get you some water?" She nodded, and he hurried to the well, drawing up a bucket and filling a clean cup he kept on a nearby shelf. When he handed it to her, their fingers brushed briefly, and he noticed hers were ice cold despite the warm September evening in 1878. She drank deeply, then looked up at him with eyes that held such profound sadness it made his chest ache. "Thank you for your kindness. What happened to you, madam? Do you need me to fetch the doctor or the sheriff?" A fresh wave of tears spilled down her cheeks. "I have no one left," she whispered, her voice breaking. "The fever took them all. My parents, my younger brother. We came west 3 months ago from Missouri, hoping for a fresh start. My father wanted to open a general store in McGill. We were staying at a boarding house while he looked for property to purchase. Then the fever came." Nathan's heart clenched. He had heard about the outbreak that had swept through McGill, a small mining town in Arizona territory. It had taken nearly 20 souls before burning itself out. He had been fortunate, living on his small ranch on the outskirts, tending his garden and his few head of cattle. He had stayed away from town during the worst of it, heeding the warnings. "I am so sorry," he said, meaning it deeply. "That is a terrible loss. Do you have anywhere to go?" "Any family back east?" She shook her head slowly. "No one. My parents were both only children. My grandparents all passed years ago. My brother was only 16. He was so excited about the West, about starting over." Her voice caught. "I have been living at the boarding house, but my money is nearly gone. The proprietor told me today I need to leave by week's end if I cannot pay." Nathan studied her face, seeing not just grief but desperation there. He was not a man who made quick decisions, but something about this woman pulled at him. Perhaps it was the way she tried to compose herself, straightening her spine even as tears continued to fall. Perhaps it was the lost look in her eyes that reminded him of a foal he had once found, separated from its mother during a storm. "What is your name?" he asked. "Miriam," she said. "Miriam Kane." "Miriam Kane," he repeated. "My name is Nathan Wheeler. I own this property, about 40 acres. I raise some cattle, keep a garden, do some breaking of horses for the folks in town. It is not much, but it is honest work and it keeps me fed." She nodded politely, clearly wondering where he was going with this. Nathan took a breath. What he was about to suggest was unconventional, but these were hard times in the Arizona territory, and sometimes survival required unconventional choices. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Kane. I have a spare room in my house. It was meant to be for storage, but it has a bed in it, a decent one my mother used before she passed 2 years back. You could stay there, help with the cooking and the household tasks. In exchange, you would have room and board, and I could pay you a small wage. Enough to save up if you want to move on eventually, or enough to help you get established here if you choose to stay." Miriam stared at him, her mouth slightly open in surprise. "You do not know me. I could be anyone." "You could be," Nathan agreed. "But I have always been a decent judge of character, and you strike me as someone who has had something terrible happen, not someone terrible themselves. Besides, I could use the help. I am not much of a cook, and the house has been falling into disarray without a woman's touch." He paused, then added, "This would be entirely proper. You would have your own room, your own space. I would expect nothing untoward." She searched his face, and he met her gaze steadily, letting her see he meant what he said. Finally, she nodded slowly. "I accept your offer, Mr. Wheeler. I am grateful for it, more than I can express." "Call me Nathan," he said, offering her his hand to help her stand. "And welcome to your new home, at least for now." She took his hand, rising unsteadily to her feet. Up close, he could see she was tall for a woman, the top of her head reaching his nose. She swayed slightly, and he realized she probably had not eaten much that day. "When did you last have a proper meal?" he asked. "Yesterday morning," she admitted. "I have not had much appetite since everything happened, and I was trying to conserve what little money I had left." Nathan shook his head. "Come inside. I will make us some supper. Nothing fancy, but it will fill your stomach." He led her toward his house, a sturdy structure he had built with his father before the older man had returned east, unable to handle the harsh Arizona climate. It had 4 rooms, a main living area with a kitchen space, his bedroom, the spare room, and a small washroom he had added on last year. It was not grand, but it was solid and well maintained. Inside, he directed her to a chair at the wooden table he had crafted himself. "Sit. Rest." Miriam sank into the chair gratefully while Nathan busied himself at the stove. He fried up some bacon, scrambled eggs from his chickens, and sliced bread he had bought in town 3 days prior. It was simple food, but when he placed it before her, she looked at it as if it were a feast. "Thank you," she whispered, then began to eat with the careful movements of someone trying not to appear too desperate. Nathan made himself a plate and sat across from her, eating in companionable silence. He studied her when she was not looking, noting the fine-boned structure of her face, the graceful way she moved despite her exhaustion. She was beautiful, he realized, though grief had dulled her features. He wondered what she looked like when she smiled. When they finished eating, he showed her to the spare room. It was small but clean, with a single bed covered in quilts his mother had made, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the garden. "I know it is not much," he said. "It is perfect," Miriam replied, her eyes filling with tears again. "More than I had any right to hope for today." "Thank you, Nathan," he nodded, feeling awkward in the face of her gratitude. "I will let you rest. The washroom is just through there if you need it. There should be soap and towels. Tomorrow we can go into town and collect your things from the boarding house." "I do not have much," she said quietly. "A trunk with some clothes and a few personal items. Everything else we sold to pay for the boarding house and the doctor and the burial plots." Nathan felt anger rise in him at how unfair life could be. This woman had lost everything and had been left with nothing but grief and a rapidly emptying purse. "We will collect whatever you have," he said firmly. "Try to get some sleep." He left her then, closing the door softly behind him. In his own room, he lay awake for a long time, thinking about the woman now sleeping under his roof. He had not been entirely truthful with her about his motivations. Yes, he could use help around the house. And yes, he believed in helping those in need. But there was something else, something he had felt the moment he saw her sitting in his garden, a connection, a pull, something he could not quite name. Nathan had been alone for 2 years since his mother died and his father left. He had convinced himself he was content with solitude, that he did not need companionship beyond the occasional conversation in town. But seeing Miriam, hearing her story, offering her shelter, it had awakened something in him he thought he had buried, the desire for someone to share his life with. He shook his head in the darkness. It was too soon for such thoughts. The woman was grieving, vulnerable. The last thing she needed was her benefactor developing feelings for her. He would be her employer, her landlord, nothing more. He would keep his distance, treat her with respect, and let her heal in her own time. Even as he made this resolution, he knew it would be difficult to keep. The next morning, Nathan woke before dawn, as was his habit. He dressed quietly and went out to tend to his animals, feeding the chickens and the 3 horses he kept in the small stable, then checking on his cattle in the pasture beyond the garden. By the time he returned to the house, the sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He found Miriam already awake, standing in the kitchen looking uncertain. "I wanted to make breakfast," she said, "but I was not sure where you keep things or what you might want." Nathan smiled, his first genuine smile in longer than he could remember. "Let me show you." He guided her through his kitchen, showing her where he stored the flour, the coffee, the bacon, and eggs. She learned quickly, nodding and asking intelligent questions. Soon she was mixing batter for flapjacks while he fried more bacon. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, and Nathan noticed she moved with efficiency despite her obvious fatigue. When they sat down to eat, the food was better than anything he had made himself in months. "You are a good cook," he said. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "My mother taught me. She said a woman should know how to feed her family properly." The smile faded as quickly as it had come, and Nathan cursed himself for reminding her of her loss. "I am sorry. I did not mean to bring up painful memories." "Everything brings up painful memories right now," Miriam said softly. "But I suppose that will ease with time, or so people keep telling me." "It does ease," Nathan said. "When my mother died, I thought I would never stop feeling the emptiness. But slowly it became less sharp. The love remains, but the pain becomes bearable." She looked at him with interest. "How did she die?" "Pneumonia. It came on sudden one winter. She was healthy one day and gone within a week. My father could not bear to stay after that. They had come west together, built this life together. Without her, it held no meaning for him. He went back to Virginia where his sister lives." "Did you consider going with him?" Nathan shook his head. "This is my home. I built this house with my own hands. I cleared this land, planted this garden. My life is here, even if it is a solitary one." "Not solitary anymore," Miriam said quietly. Their eyes met across the table, and Nathan felt that pull again, stronger this time. He looked away first, standing to clear the dishes. "We should go into town and collect your things." The ride into McGill took about 40 minutes on the wagon Nathan used for hauling supplies. Miriam sat beside him on the bench seat, her hands folded in her lap, her back straight despite the jostling of the rough road. She had changed into a different dress, still showing signs of wear but cleaner than the one she had arrived in. McGill was a small town, built around the copper mines that had drawn people to this harsh land. The main street held a general store, a saloon, a hotel, a few other establishments. The boarding house where Miriam had been staying was on the edge of town, a 2-story wooden structure that had seen better days. Nathan waited with the wagon while Miriam went inside. She emerged 20 minutes later with the proprietor, a sour-faced woman named Mrs. Hutchins, following her. A young man carried Miriam's trunk, which he loaded onto the wagon. "I hope you know what you are doing, Mr. Wheeler," Mrs. Hutchins said, her voice dripping with disapproval. "Taking in a single woman living alone together. People will talk. People always talk," Nathan replied evenly. "Miss Kane is my employee, helping with household duties. There is nothing improper about it." "That is what they all say," Mrs. Hutchins sniffed, but she took the money Miriam handed her for the final days of room and board and went back inside. Nathan helped Miriam onto the wagon seat, then climbed up beside her. As they pulled away, he glanced at her. "Are you all right?" "I am glad to be leaving that place," Miriam said. "Mrs. Hutchins made it clear she thought I was a burden, taking up space better used for paying customers." "Never mind that I was paying until my money ran out. You do not have to worry about that anymore," Nathan said. "You have a home for as long as you need it." She looked at him, her green eyes serious. "Why are you being so kind to me? Truly?" Nathan considered his answer carefully. "My mother used to say that we are all tested by how we treat those who can offer us nothing in return. You needed help, and I was in a position to give it. It seemed like the right thing to do." "It is more than that," Miriam pressed. "You did not have to offer me work or a wage or your mother's room. You could have given me a meal and sent me on my way." He was quiet for a moment, guiding the horses around a rocky patch in the road. "Maybe I was lonely," he admitted finally. "Maybe I was tired of talking only to horses and chickens. Maybe I saw someone who needed kindness and I needed to give it. Does the reason matter so much? I suppose not," Miriam said. "I am grateful either way." They rode the rest of the way in silence, but it was a different silence than before, more thoughtful. When they reached the house, Nathan carried her trunk into the spare room and left her to unpack while he went back to his chores. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Miriam proved to be an excellent housekeeper and cook. She rose early, prepared breakfast, cleaned the house, tended the garden alongside Nathan, and cooked supper in the evenings. In return, Nathan paid her a fair wage each week and treated her with unfailing courtesy. But courtesy could not stop the feelings that were growing in him. He noticed everything about her. The way she hummed while she worked, old songs he did not recognize. The way she bit her lower lip when concentrating on a task. The way the setting sun caught in her hair when she hung laundry on the line. The sound of her laugh the first time he heard it, 2 weeks after she arrived, when one of his chickens stole a piece of bread right from her hand. It was a small laugh, tentative, as if she was surprised she could still make that sound. But it was genuine, and it made Nathan's heart race. He tried to maintain his distance to keep their relationship professional. But it was difficult when they shared meals, when they worked side by side in the garden, when they sat on the porch in the evenings watching the sun set over the mountains. Miriam was changing too, he noticed. The drawn, haunted look was fading from her face. She smiled more often. The shadows under her eyes were disappearing as she slept better. She was coming back to life, like a plant that had been starved of water now blooming again. One evening in late October, about 6 weeks after she had arrived, they were sitting on the porch after supper. The air had cooled with the coming of autumn, and Miriam had wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. Nathan sat in his usual chair, drinking coffee while she mended one of his shirts by lamplight. "Can I ask you something?" she said suddenly. "Of course. Why have you never married? A man like you, with property and a good reputation, you could have your pick of the available women in McGill." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. "I suppose I never found the right woman. Most of the single women in town are looking for a man with prospects, someone who will strike it rich in the mines or build a business empire. I am just a simple rancher. That does not appeal to everyone." "That seems foolish," Miriam said. "Security and kindness are worth more than the promise of riches." "Is that what you would look for?" Nathan asked. "If you were looking," she set down her mending, staring out at the darkening landscape. "I think I would look for someone who treated me as an equal. Someone who respected my mind as well as my abilities. Someone who made me feel safe." She paused. "Someone like you." Nathan's heart stopped. He turned to look at her, but she was still facing forward, her profile outlined by lamplight. "Miriam," he said quietly. "I know it is too soon," she interrupted. "I know I am still grieving, still finding my footing. I know I should not be thinking such things about my employer. But I would be lying if I said I had not noticed how kind you are, how patient. How you have never once made me feel like a burden or an obligation." "You are not a burden," Nathan said firmly. "You have never been a burden." She finally turned to face him. "What am I then?" The question hung in the air between them. Nathan could give her a safe answer, maintain the fiction that she was simply his employee, nothing more. Or he could tell her the truth. He chose the truth. "You are the first thing I think about when I wake up," he said. "You are the reason I find excuses to come back to the house during the day. You are the person I want to share my thoughts with, my day with, my life with." He took a breath. "I know it is too soon. I know you have been through terrible loss. I do not want to take advantage of your situation. But you asked what you are to me, and that is the honest answer." Miriam's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I thought I was imagining it, the way you look at me sometimes, the way you find reasons to be near me. I thought it was wishful thinking." "It is not wishful thinking," Nathan said. He stood up, crossing the distance between them, and knelt beside her chair so they were at eye level. "But I do not want to rush you into anything. You have every right to take all the time you need." She reached out and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his bearded cheek. "What if I do not want to wait? What if being around you makes me feel alive again in a way I did not think possible? What if you are the best thing to come out of this terrible situation?" Nathan covered her hand with his own. "Then we take this slow. We do this right. I want to court you properly, Miriam Kane. I want to give you all the things you deserve." "I deserve you," she whispered, and leaned forward to kiss him. It was a soft kiss, tentative and sweet. Nathan felt something inside him that had been locked away for years break open. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "I am going to marry you someday," he said, "if you will have me." "Yes," Miriam said simply. "Yes, I will have you." Over the following months, Nathan courted Miriam with old-fashioned determination. Despite living under the same roof, he treated her with the utmost propriety. He brought her wildflowers from the meadow beyond his property. He took her on buggy rides into the countryside, showing her the land he loved. He read to her in the evenings from books of poetry he ordered from a catalog. The people of McGill did talk, as Mrs. Hutchins had predicted. But Nathan did not care. He introduced Miriam as his intended whenever they went into town together, and the respect in his voice when he spoke of her silenced most criticism. Miriam bloomed under his attention. The sad, broken woman who had stumbled into his garden was gone, replaced by someone confident and joyful. She laughed often now, her eyes bright with happiness. She talked about the future without pain, making plans, dreaming dreams. In December, Nathan took her to see the first snow fall on the mountains. They stood bundled in heavy coats, watching the white dust the peaks in the distance. "It is beautiful," Miriam breathed. "You are beautiful," Nathan replied and pulled a small box from his pocket. "I know we have not been courting long by conventional standards, but I am certain about this, about you, about us. Miriam Kane, will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond, all he could afford but chosen with care. Miriam's eyes filled with happy tears. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her as snow began to fall around them, soft and silent. They were married 3 weeks later, just after the new year of 1879, in the small church in McGill. The ceremony was simple, attended by a few of Nathan's friends from town and some neighbors from surrounding ranches. Miriam wore a dress she had sewn herself from fabric Nathan had bought her as a Christmas gift, a soft blue that brought out her eyes. When Nathan said his vows, his voice was steady and sure. When Miriam said hers, she cried, but they were tears of joy. The minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Nathan kissed his bride with all the love he had been holding back. The small congregation applauded, and they walked out of the church hand in hand, ready to begin their life together. That night, in the room that had been Nathan's alone, they came together as man and wife. Nathan was gentle, patient, making sure Miriam felt cherished and safe. She responded to him with a passion that surprised them both, and when they finally lay in each other's arms, exhausted and happy, Nathan knew he had found something rare and precious. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I love you too," Miriam replied. "More than I ever thought possible." The early months of their marriage were blissful. Miriam took over the running of the household completely, managing their finances with a skill that impressed Nathan. She suggested improvements to the ranch, ideas for expanding their income. They bought more chickens, started selling eggs in town. She planted a vegetable garden 3 times the size of Nathan's original one, and they began selling produce as well. By spring, they were making enough extra income that Nathan was able to buy more cattle. Miriam proved to have a head for business, negotiating better prices at the general store and finding new markets for their goods. But more than the material improvements, it was the emotional richness that made Nathan marvel at his good fortune. Coming home to Miriam's smile, sharing meals together, falling asleep with her in his arms, it was everything he had never known he wanted. One evening in April, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Miriam took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "I have something to tell you," she said, her eyes shining. "We are going to have a baby." Nathan stared at her, the words taking a moment to sink in. Then joy exploded through him, and he let out a whoop of happiness that startled the horses in the stable. He swept Miriam into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. "When?" he asked, setting her down gently. "The doctor thinks October, maybe late September." Nathan did quick calculations in his head. "We need to add on to the house. We need a proper nursery. And we should get a rocking chair. My mother always said a rocking chair was essential for a baby. And we need to make sure we have enough money saved in case the doctor needs to come, and—" Miriam laughed and put her finger on his lips. "We have time. We will prepare everything we need. But right now, I just want to enjoy this moment with you." Nathan pulled her close, resting his hand on her still flat stomach where their child grew. "I cannot believe how lucky I am. A year ago I was alone. Now I have a wife I adore and a baby on the way." "We are both lucky," Miriam said softly. "A year ago I had lost everything. I thought my life was over. But you found me in your garden, crying and broken, and you gave me a reason to live again." They stood together as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold. The future stretched before them, full of promise and possibility. As summer arrived, Nathan worked to expand their house, adding a room specifically for the baby. Miriam helped when she could, though he insisted she not overexert herself. She had hired a woman from town, Mrs. Doris Fletcher, to come help with the heavier household chores a few times a week, using money from their increased income. Miriam's pregnancy progressed smoothly. She remained healthy and energetic well into her 6th month, only slowing down as the Arizona summer heat became oppressive. Nathan was attentive to her every need, sometimes overly so, making her laugh with his constant fussing. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she teased one day when he insisted she sit down after walking from the kitchen to the porch. "I know," Nathan said, "but you are carrying the most precious cargo in the world, so I am going to fuss whether you like it or not." In late September, as Miriam's time drew near, Nathan became increasingly anxious. He had arranged for the doctor to be on call, had made sure Miriam had everything she needed, had even convinced Mrs. Fletcher to stay at the house for the final weeks. The labor began on a cool evening in early October. Nathan fetched the doctor while Mrs. Fletcher stayed with Miriam, and then he paced the living room, listening to the sounds from the bedroom with growing dread. Childbirth was dangerous. Women died. He could lose her. The thought made him sick with fear, but Mrs. Fletcher kept coming out to reassure him, and the doctor seemed calm when he arrived. Hours passed, feeling like days. Nathan prayed, bargained with God, promised anything if Miriam and the baby would both be all right. Finally, just before dawn, he heard a baby's cry. His heart stopped, then raced. A few minutes later, Mrs. Fletcher emerged, smiling. "You have a son," she said, "a healthy boy, and your wife is tired but well." Nathan nearly collapsed with relief. He was ushered into the bedroom, where Miriam lay propped up on pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. "Meet your son," she said softly. Nathan approached on shaking legs and looked down at the baby. He had a shock of dark hair and was making small, snuffling noises. As Nathan watched, the baby opened his eyes, and Nathan felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "He is perfect," Nathan breathed. "You are perfect, thank you." He sat on the edge of the bed, and Miriam leaned against him. Together they gazed at their son. "What should we name him?" Miriam asked. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Now, looking at this tiny person who was part of both of them, Nathan thought of his grandfather, a good man who had taught him about integrity and hard work. "Thomas," he suggested. "Thomas Wheeler." "Thomas," Miriam repeated, testing the name. "I like it. Thomas it is." The next weeks were exhausting but wonderful. Thomas was a good baby, alert and curious, with a healthy appetite. Nathan took over more of the ranch work to let Miriam rest and recover, though she insisted on doing what she could. Watching Miriam with their son filled Nathan with a tenderness he could barely express. She was a natural mother, patient and loving, singing lullabies that brought tears to Nathan's eyes. One night, when Thomas was about a month old, Nathan woke to find Miriam's side of the bed empty. He got up and found her in the nursery, sitting in the rocking chair he had bought, nursing the baby in the moonlight streaming through the window. She looked up when he entered, smiling. "Did we wake you?" "No," Nathan lied, coming to stand beside them. He stroked Thomas's downy head with one finger. "I just wanted to make sure you were both all right." "We are more than all right," Miriam said. "We are happy." Nathan knelt beside the rocking chair. "Do you ever think about that day when you came to my garden?" "All the time," Miriam said. "It was the worst day of my life and the beginning of the best part of my life, all at once. If I had not been so desperate, if I had not stumbled through your gate, I might never have met you." "I would have found you somehow," Nathan said. "I am certain of it. We were meant to be together." "Yes," Miriam agreed, looking down at their son. "We were." The years that followed were full and happy. The ranch prospered as Nathan and Miriam worked side by side to build their future. Thomas grew into a sturdy, curious toddler, then a bright, energetic child. He had his mother's green eyes and his father's steady temperament. When Thomas was 3, Miriam gave birth to twins, much to everyone's surprise. Mary and Margaret, identical girls with dark curls and mischievous smiles, doubled the chaos in the Wheeler household but also doubled the love. Nathan had to expand the house again, adding more bedrooms. The ranch continued to grow as well. They now had a substantial herd of cattle, a large flock of chickens, and had even started raising horses to sell. Miriam's business acumen had turned Nathan's small ranch into a thriving enterprise. But success did not change them. They remained humble, hardworking, devoted to each other and their children. Nathan never forgot the broken woman he had found in his garden, and Miriam never forgot the man who had given her a reason to live again. When Thomas was 10 and the twins were 7, Miriam gave birth to their last child, another son they named James. By then, they were established members of the McGill community. Nathan served on the town council, and Miriam had started a school for the children of the surrounding ranches, teaching them in a room they had built specifically for that purpose. The children grew up surrounded by love and security. Thomas inherited his mother's head for numbers and his father's love of the land. The twins were inseparable, always getting into mischief but with hearts of gold. James was quiet and thoughtful, more interested in books than ranching, which Nathan supported wholeheartedly. Every child should follow their own path, he told Miriam when she worried that James might feel pressured to work the ranch. Years turned into decades. The children grew up and began lives of their own. Thomas took over the day-to-day running of the ranch, though Nathan still worked alongside him as long as his body allowed. Mary married a doctor and moved to Tucson. Margaret surprised everyone by becoming a teacher like her mother, taking over the school when Miriam decided to retire. James went east to college and became a lawyer. Though he visited often through it all, Nathan and Miriam remained deeply in love. They had weathered storms, both literal and figurative. There had been droughts that threatened their livelihood, a fire that destroyed part of the stable, illnesses and injuries. But they had faced everything together, their bond growing stronger with each challenge overcome. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Miriam back to the spot where he had proposed, the overlook where they had watched the first snow fall on the mountains all those years ago. They were older now, both in their 50s, with gray in their hair and lines on their faces earned through years of hard work and hearty laughter. But when Nathan looked at Miriam, he still saw the beautiful woman who had stumbled into his garden and so much more besides. 30 years, Miriam said, looking out at the familiar landscape. It seems like both forever and no time at all. You have any regrets? Nathan asked. She turned to him, her green eyes still as bright as the day he met her. Not a single one. You gave me everything, Nathan. A home, a family, a purpose. You gave me my life back. You gave me those things too, Nathan said. Before you, I was just existing. You taught me how to live. He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, fitting perfectly against him as she always had. I love you, Nathan said. More now than even on the day we married. I love you too, Miriam replied. Always and forever. They stood together as the sun set, just as they had so many times before, content in the life they had built and the love they shared. More years passed. Nathan's hair turned completely white, and his steps slowed, but his love for his wife never diminished. Miriam developed arthritis in her hands, which made the fine needlework she loved difficult, but Nathan would sit with her in the evenings, reading to her as he had done when they were courting. They became grandparents, then great-grandparents. The house that Nathan had built with his own hands was always full of family, especially during holidays. Children and grandchildren would gather, filling the rooms with noise and laughter, and Nathan and Miriam would sit together, watching it all with satisfaction. "We did well," Nathan would say, and Miriam would squeeze his hand in agreement. In the spring of 1909, as Nathan approached his 80th birthday, he fell ill. It started as a simple cold but developed into pneumonia, the same illness that had taken his mother all those years ago. The doctor came, did what he could, but Nathan knew his time was coming to an end. Miriam refused to leave his bedside. She sat in the chair next to their bed, holding his hand, talking to him about their life together. "You remember the day we met?" she asked him one evening as the sun set outside their window. "Every detail," Nathan said, his voice weak but clear. "You were sitting in my garden crying. You had lost everything. You said you had no one left. And you gave me everything," Miriam said, tears streaming down her face. "A home, a family, a love I never dreamed possible." "I was the lucky one," Nathan insisted. "Finding you was the greatest blessing of my life." Their children were gathered in the house, waiting, but Nathan had asked for time alone with his wife. There were things he needed to say. "I am not afraid," he told her. "I have lived a full life, a happy life. I have no regrets." "I am afraid," Miriam admitted. "I do not know how to exist without you." Nathan squeezed her hand with what little strength he had left. "You will be fine. You are the strongest person I know, and I will be waiting for you when your time comes. We will find each other again." "Promise me," Miriam whispered. "I promise," Nathan said. "In this life or the next, you and I will always find our way back to each other." That night, with Miriam's hand in his and the sound of her voice telling him she loved him, Nathan Wheeler closed his eyes for the last time. He died as he had lived, peacefully and surrounded by love. The funeral was attended by half the town of McGill and people from ranches 50 miles away. Nathan had been respected and loved, a man of integrity and kindness. But no one grieved more deeply than Miriam, who had lost her partner, her best friend, her great love. In the weeks after Nathan's death, Miriam struggled. The house felt empty without him, despite being full of family who came to support her. She would walk out to the garden, to the spot where they had first met, and sit on the bench, remembering, but she was strong, as Nathan had said. She had survived tremendous loss before and rebuilt her life. She would do it again, not for herself, but for him. She would honor his memory by living well, by being there for their children and grandchildren, by keeping alive the legacy of love they had created together. Miriam lived another 6 years, remaining active and engaged with her family and community. She never remarried, never even considered it. Nathan had been her one great love, and she was content with the years they had shared. In the autumn of 1915, at the age of 81, Miriam Kane Wheeler passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her children found her in the morning, a smile on her face, as if she was dreaming of something wonderful. They buried her next to Nathan in the cemetery on the hill overlooking McGill. On her gravestone, beneath her name and dates, they carved the words she had requested. She found love in a garden and built a life worth living. The ranch stayed in the Wheeler family, passed down through generations. The house Nathan built still stands, though it has been added onto and modernized. The garden where Miriam once sat crying has been maintained lovingly, with a plaque telling the story of how Nathan and Miriam met. Their great-great-grandchildren play there now, among the tomato plants and flowers, not knowing that this spot was where a love story began that would echo through the generations. They do not know about the grief that brought Miriam to this place, or the kindness that made Nathan offer her a home. But the legacy of that love lives on in them, in the values Nathan and Miriam instilled in their children, in the land they tended together, in the community they helped build. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun sets behind the Arizona mountains, painting the sky in brilliant colors, people say you can see two figures standing together near the old garden, hand in hand, watching the sunset. They say it is Nathan and Miriam, together again as Nathan promised, their love eternal and unbreakable. Whether it is true or just a romantic story, it does not matter. What matters is that Nathan Wheeler found a woman crying in his garden one September evening in 1878, and instead of turning away, he offered her kindness. That single act of compassion created a love that transformed two lives and rippled outward, touching countless others. From loss came love. From despair came hope. From two broken, lonely people came a family, a legacy, a testament to the power of opening your heart to someone who needs it most. That is the story of Nathan and Miriam Wheeler, and it is a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth honoring. It is a reminder that even in the darkest moments when it seems like all is lost, love can find a way. Sometimes it arrives when you least expect it, in a form you would never have imagined. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to see another's pain and offer comfort, one person willing to take a chance on a stranger, one person willing to believe that two broken pieces can come together to make something whole and beautiful. Nathan and Miriam proved that love can heal the deepest wounds, that kindness can change everything, that two souls meant to be together will find each other, even in the most unlikely circumstances. Their garden still blooms each spring, the flowers bright and fragrant, a living testament to a love that began with tears and ended with joy, a love that started with loss and created a legacy that will endure for generations to come. In the end, that is all any of us can hope for: to love deeply, to be loved in return, to build something meaningful that outlasts our brief time on this earth. Nathan and Miriam Wheeler did all of that and more. They found each other when both had lost everything. They built a life together filled with love, laughter, hard work, and purpose. They raised children who carried their values into the world. They created a legacy that still thrives more than a century later. And they proved that sometimes the most profound love stories begin in the most unexpected ways, with a woman crying in a garden and a man willing to offer her hope. That is their story, complete and whole. A love that endured from that first meeting in 1878 until they were finally reunited beyond this life, together forever, as they were always meant to be.